Truth be told, I do have a bit of an obsession with lists. Top 50 games, top 10 films, top this, top that, something something. That also applies to my constant thoughts about what my favourite games of all time are. So I decided to look once again at my 30 years of existence on Earth and make this list. In contrast to my one about music, this list is unranked, mostly because anytime I may as well play a certain game, it can suddenly move up to a top 10 or top 5 list. Also keep in mind that with my experiences with video games, the majority of entries on this list are on Nintendo systems, plus there are multiple entries from a few franchises. There are games I would love to add to this list, but I've either never played them or am replaying for evaluation. Some of them I've reviewed on my Video Games for Fun channel, others I haven't. Any of you, whether you've met me, know me, or have been following this channel for however long you have been, may be surprised at the choices and omissions. But every one of these 30 games I'm going to talk about as succinctly as possible have positive memories attached to them, which will surely never fade as this list changes over time. So sit back and enjoy. I have to start this list with the first game I've reviewed on my channel, one of the greatest adventure games I've ever played. Zork Nemesis may be a departure from the light-hearted fantasy adventures that were its predecessors, to the point of it not deserving to have the word Zork in its title, but judged on its own merits, it is exceptional. The dark atmosphere is certainly reflected well in the production values, with lovely graphics and amazing sound and music. On top of this, the puzzles are fun to figure out, plus there's a compelling non-linear narrative that almost compels you to complete the game more than once. This is one of those games that I wanted a GameCube for, so I contributed to it being the best-selling game on the console. Super Smash Bros. Melee really elaborate on the good aspects of its predecessor, with more characters and stages than ever before. The classic mode is less repetitive, the other single player modes are nice too, and the variety of options made for many a memorable multiplayer match, many of which I just did myself against the AI for the sake of it. The speed and competitive scene of this game are noteworthy. I'm not really into the competitive scene, even with this game, but this GameCube classic is unforgettable. While many people got a Nintendo 64 just to experience Mario's debut in 3D, I didn't play Super Mario 64 until it seemed like the console was on its last legs. The age of the game didn't stop me from appreciating it. Exploring all the levels and just collecting one star after another was so much fun. And let's not forget the importance of the game. It's one of the first 3D platformers ever made, complete with a variety of objectives and a selection of open world playgrounds to play in. Plus, it comes complete with 360-degree analog controls and a diverse set of moves for Mario, plus a dynamic camera. Starfox 64, better known in Australia as Light Wars, was one of those games that persuaded me to get a Nintendo 64. I remember trying over and over again in my youth to not only get to Andros, but also defeat him. Over time, I loved finding the different paths, trying to increase my high scores, not to mention the occasional multiplayer game. Easily one of my favourite aspects of this game is the dialogue and the voice acting, given how much I randomly quote the game.
Do a barrel roll! Hey Einstein, I'm on your side!
A great shooter game with nice controls, this is a memorable entry in the Nintendo 64 library. Breath of the Wild felt like a breath of fresh air for the Legend of Zelda series. The more open-ended exploration that was featured in the 80s, complete with a massive world and the freedom to go almost anywhere from the get-go in whatever order you choose, is wonderfully epic. The art style is beautiful and the soundtrack experimental and interesting in its ambience. It's one of the more challenging games in the series, with many fun and rewarding gameplay mechanics to experiment with. Disregarding potentially unfavourable comparisons to the rise of open world games today, this game was, to me, pure escapism. I played a little of the first Prince of Persia in my youth, and was surprised to hear of the release of Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. I wish I played it sooner because the positive reviews were generally right. The story and production values are good, and the combat and special abilities, including the concept of rewinding time, hence the title, are generally cool. The level and puzzle design, as well as structure and sense of progression, is truly something to marvel at. All of this made for the desire to simply play it more than once after the end credits rolled. Not many games have done that to me, I think. I never really grew up with Super Metroid, but it's hard to deny it's a classic Super Nintendo game. The sci-fi visuals and sound make for a memorable atmosphere, complete with a sense of isolation and being lost. The variety of ecosystems to explore are generally well designed, which makes for some of the best logical game progression in video games. And yes, this game is basically speedrunning central. I'm not that good at it, but I enjoy watching others do it. I just like revisiting this game to take my time in exploring and finding all the secrets, as well as engage in game-breaking tactics I'm actually good at. This is my favourite 2D Metroid. I somehow can't leave Mario Party 2 out of this list. To me, it is probably the best of the series, and improves on its predecessor, in regards to coin loss penalties, and yes, the control stick minigames. It's a Mario Party game, where the production values are fairly low and the game rules the same. Yet this is the one I spend the most hours on. The board games have more of a premise, plus costumes. The minigames are generally fun, and the item system is a nice inclusion, and even adds a bit of strategy to the chaotic luck-based fun. If you want more proof, check out the playlist where my friend Mary and I have multiplayer fun. The graphics are the only good thing about this game. Where's the gameplay? Well, that's what Shigeru Miyamoto initially thought about Donkey Kong Country, an SNES game that I played quite a bit with my cousins. It's hard to deny that the graphics are good, and are quite a technological feat for the console's last years, but the gameplay is really where it's at, with a nice take on the 2D platformer gameplay that Mario had down pat. The level design was tight, and switching between the two cons was a nice touch. The music is also superb, with the behind the scenes work on tracks such as Aquatic Ambience being inspirational. I discovered Pokemon with the anime, yet I didn't predict at the time that with a transfer pack connected to the TV via Pokemon Stadium, and eventually my own Game Boy Color, I would be spending hours wandering around the world trying to be the very best like no one ever was. There were so many Pokemon to catch and battle with, which was addictive, especially with its rock paper scissors strategies. Even after the end credits rolled, I kept on playing. I've played the Pokemon games on and off for years, and I'm gradually going through the series even today, yet I have a lot of nostalgia for Pokemon Blue from the first generation. If I have one title to blame for properly introducing me to real-time strategy and experience staying up late, it is Warcraft 2. I got so addicted to this game, whether it was experimenting with all the human and orc units, figuring out the best strategies to win a scenario, or listening to all the funny sound effects.
Moloch, leave me alone. Yes, me lord.
When I was younger, I had to go to bed at a specific time, except I would stay up for half an hour or so with Dad just engaging with the gameplay. Whoops. Also, Warcraft 2 is a good example of how to do a sequel, in regards to the production values and improved controls. Majora's Mask is surprisingly the first Legend of Zelda game I ever played. I had never played a game like this before in my youth, especially in regards to storytelling and an interesting level of difficulty. Despite its similarities to Ocarina of Time, this game is retrospectively the oddball entry in the franchise, because of its 3-day system, where you can't necessarily take your time, and emphasis on side quests. But it's really due to the strange and unconventional story that contains emotional depth. I also enjoy the puzzles and exploration. This game holds a very special place in my heart. Gamers asking, where's Super Mario RPG 2 is a good indication of how good this SNES title was, or is. Sure, the Paper Mario and Mario Luigi games have their seriously excellent aspects, but Super Mario RPG is probably the best example of Mario mixed with Final Fantasy. In contrast to other games, stats and battle mechanics are simple, and older audiences can have just as much fun with them as the kids. The graphics and music are also lovely and charming. Given that the SNES is generally my go-to for platformers and RPGs, mixing them together in this game made for one of the most fun experiences on the system. I remember being a little overwhelmed by Banjo-Kazooie at first, given that it was one of the first 3D platformers I ever played, but soon enough, its charm, level design, and sense of progression won me over. The idea of pairing a bear with a bird works so well, with a variety of moves to play with. The music is also amazing, right down to the seamless transitions during exploration, such as running on land to swimming. The game is relatively easy, but even then, that makes the game fun, and worth replaying just for the sake of it. One of WarioWare's best efforts that can be considered superior to Mario 64. It is extremely likely that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Switch will feature on this list, but before that happens, I can't forget how much fun I had with its predecessor on the Wii U. This game had, especially for its time, a rich number of characters and stages. Much of the bonus content kept me coming back, and then some, especially in multiplayer, and a couple of tourneys I participated in at a bar. I didn't win, but who cares? The fun Nintendo history and balanced speed makes this release my favourite of the series alongside Melee. Then again, I could cheat and put the entire Smash Bros. Series on this list. It's that good. Any gaming list that doesn't feature Tetris mostly feels incomplete. Then again, this game is simple and it excels in that simplicity. Because of that, it feels impossible to find a fault with the game. Plus pretty much anyone can understand it. It is hard to count all the hours I've spent trying to clear the most lines and get high scores, whether it was on the handheld or on the computer. Just about whatever form or system you play it on, it's addictive and ageless. It's important to note that it coined the term Tetris effect, plus the music on the Game Boy version is memorable. How could I find it in me to want to buy and like a game with cutesy characters and kindness that was obviously for children? Change to a more adult product with violence, profanity, references to pop culture and generally rude humour. Conker's Bad Fur Day is a different take on the Banjo-Kazooie kind of game, to the point where it's almost its own genre. It even tones down the collectathon aspect to the point of including a variety of context-sensitive sections, such as battling against a giant talking and singing poop, and it's a lot of fun. Many hours were also spent indulging in multiplayer, even against AI bots. There have been very few games in my gaming life I anticipate as highly as Metroid Prime 2. My appreciation for it has increased the more I play it over the years, where I realise that it's more than just a sequel to the great Metroid Prime. The level design is well done, and the art direction is so alien and sci-fi-like, it's good. Even the somewhat unoriginal Light World vs Dark World concept is nice, complete with a challenging level of difficulty that feels rewarding to master and overcome. The production values and gameplay mechanics overall make this game worthy of the Metroid title. I grew up more with the 3D entries of the Legend of Zelda series, but if the reputation of the SNES game A Link to the Past is anything to go by, this game is almost the definition of classic. The graphics still have a level of charm to them today, even though they are 2D. Exploring not just one world but the other Dark World was so much fun. The puzzles are clever, especially in regards to the multi-layered dungeons. I especially like how much of the gameplay conventions, items, and even music basically made the later Zelda games what they are. This game is one of many reasons why we gamers still like Nintendo. The hype surrounding Super Mario Odyssey was huge. The city with people, which surprisingly was a world Mario could explore. The ability to capture enemies and things with Cappy, the music with the memorable song Jump Up Superstar, the colourful graphics, plus it's Mario, no further explanation required. Well, this game is an interesting return to the more open-ended design of Super Mario 64, which many of us were craving regardless of the recent quality titles. The game delivered, it had plenty to do. This is the game I got bundled with the Nintendo Switch. It is easy to say that not many video games can make you cry, or feel emotion, or even that they are art, but Shadow of the Colossus is pretty much an exception. With visual and sound design that is raw and beautiful, the game is epic with its 16 enormous boss battles. It can be an interesting challenge to figure out how to destroy them, yet when they die, even for the purpose of a quest, tragedy strikes. It was also due to this game that I discovered Fumito Ueda and got to play the other games he made, Ico and The Last Guardian, yet Shadow of the Colossus is, to me, the best of the three. In some respects, Wind Waker was the game that made me a fan of the Zelda series after playing A Little Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. And for good reason. This game is beautiful, which many people may not have realised when it was first announced before release, with the cel-shaded graphics being timeless. The story was simple yet emotionally compelling. The gameplay is so smooth and fun, it's essentially a Zelda game with bells and whistles. Even the sailing gave me a sense of adventure. If my yearning to keep playing after my first session with it is any indication, this game is a work of art. Donkey Kong Country 2 improves on almost every aspect of its predecessor, even in the tiniest of ways. The graphics and of course the music are superb. The secrets and switching the two cons Diddy and Dixie have more of a purpose. Secrets have little hints and cool rewards, and the over-reliance on Diddy from the first game has been rectified for more fair gameplay mechanics. It's definitely more challenging than the relatively easy first game, but it's not unfair. The challenge makes coming back to this game feel somewhat fresh every time. One of the best games on the Super Nintendo. Easily. Resident Evil 4 was the first Resident Evil game I ever played, and I won't forget the moments of exploration as well as constant fights against the enemies. This game's experience went beyond what I saw in the screenshots. It was an adrenaline-filled ride that somehow didn't lose the survival horror aspect of the series, even with the zombies being absent. In retrospect, Resident Evil 4 can be credited for making the series more action-packed, but considering how many times I've completed it and indulged in the extras, I don't really care about that. It's one of the best in the series and a blast to play. One of my favourite sequels in all of gaming, Banjo-Tooie is in some ways similar to its predecessor, yet it improves on a number of aspects of it. While many could argue about the darker tone and less whimsical music, and especially the larger worlds and backtracking, wandering around those worlds felt mesmerising in my childhood. Plus they feel big enough. Splitting up the Bear and Bird was easily the thing I was excited for most back in the day, and it didn't disappoint. Collecting jigsaw pieces and playing minigames and so on has never been this fun. To me, this great game is roughly equal to its predecessor. When playing Starcraft for the first time, I wouldn't have considered it one of the best real-time strategy games ever made, considering how much I liked Warcraft 2. The more I read into the similarities and differences between the Terran, Zerg and Protoss, the more compelling it was to play the game. The three races look and play so differently, yet are surprisingly balanced, which is something that can be really appreciated from a game design perspective. I enjoy the campaigns and the story very much, but easily one of its best aspects is the multiplayer. We had many LAN games, especially on Friday nights. I have fond memories of Super Mario World, a game I have been playing ever since I was little. It was the game that generally introduced me to console gaming and the Mario series. Super Mario World is definitely a great game with tight 2D platformer gameplay, complete with cool power-ups and level designs that contain many a secret. The music is catchy, and the graphics were simple and colourful, and were a good showcase for the launch of the Super Nintendo. Plus, it features the debut of Yoshi, what's not to love? This is a game I can keep coming back to. Chrono Trigger, a game I only started to play in 2012, is one of my first JRPGs, and it's probably still one of the best ones, generally deserving of its high praise. This game is developed with so much passion. The art style is lovely, and the soundtrack is one of the best you'll ever hear in video games. The exploration and battle system are cool to play with, and thankfully cut back on random encounters. The story is simple, yet compelling, complete with time travel and multiple endings. This game is, to me, a masterpiece. Even today, the first 3D game in the Legend of Zelda series, Ocarina of Time, is generally considered one of the best games ever made. I played it alongside Majora's Mask and loved the exploration, puzzles, world, and ideas, including the Z targeting. This game was developed with such care that everything in it feels organic, connected and logical without resorting to gimmicks or anything else. The story is nice too, even with the limitations of the hardware and games transitioning to the third dimension. This game is not only important to the industry, it is such a fun experience, and one of my favourite games of all time. Actually, I lied a little about this list being unranked. I actually do have a favourite game of all time. Here it is. This is a choice that may surprise you regardless of the praise that this game has received. Like the other games on this list, Metroid Prime has many positive memories attached to it, and came out at a good time in my life. And that's the point. Before its release, games were mostly just toys to me. Metroid Prime immersed me in a way that no game up to that point had done. The first-person view of Samus Aran's visor with its option to scan, as well as the stunning graphics and moody soundtrack exemplifies that. It is all down to the little details, such as steam, goo, and the reflection of Samus's eyes. The gameplay is also extremely engaging. It is essentially Metroid in 3D, right down to the logical sense of item progression, the almost perfect level design, and the possibility of speedrunning. The giant bosses are especially memorable, and I remember feeling so happy after overcoming each one. With this game, I really felt like I was exploring another world. Whenever I go back to it, I have fun with the game, including its unlockables, and think back to how it changed my perspective on video games, leading into not just having fun with them, but analysing the artistic details, their development, and the positive impacts on people. It is quite possibly my favourite game of all time. Well, this was a fun trilogy of videos. I'm sure any one of you watching this have a different list to mine. I think the important thing to get across from all this though, is basically our individual journeys with video games. What we've played, what we've experienced, how games have made an impact on us, how they've changed us, and maybe how we've learned more about ourselves and bonded with people. While it's easy to disagree or be skeptical about such statements in regards to the negative and controversial aspects of the medium, it's important to note the positive aspects, and above all, treasure the memories. So to end all this, I ask you, what are your top games of all time? What games have made an impact on your lives and why? Feel free to discuss in the comments down below. Hope you enjoyed this trilogy of videos, and have a good day or night or whatever it is. Thanks for watching.